Hello YouTube, welcome back. Well, today I'm at somewhere where I've never been before, but lots of other people have been and come every year. It's the Primex exhibition, and over time there have been lots of rural exhibitions of tractor merchants, fertiliser merchants, farm supplies merchants, even councils, all getting together in a field which, as you can see, isn't just about all mud, and I'm wearing gumboots. But I picked the best day, I think, to come to Primex, which has been afflicted by rain, and there are many people, hundreds and hundreds of stalls. Why would a macadamia farmer want to come to a place like this? Well, you'd probably have your own reasons if you showed up here, but curiosity is my biggest reason. I'm not actually here to buy much, but ideas for things are absolutely in full supply, and there are interesting guest lectures as well. We're about to go to one by Ross Arnett on regenerative farming, and he's very well known in the macadamia industry. Out here in Casino, it's not all macadamias at all. In fact, the local farmers are much more cattle than they are macadamia, but it's really interesting. So what I'm going to do is show you some bits that I find particularly interesting to macadamia farmers out of the show. So come along for the ride. One of the general utility vehicles you can have on a farm, and I went for a ride in one in Mel Katchaniga's farm, is a little ATV. They four-wheel drive, usually about 25-30 grand, so they're as much as a little car, I suppose, if you want to look at it that way. This particular one's loaded up with a diesel tank at the back, so it's got a bit of a pump, or it may not be diesel, this particular one, but there are diesel tanks where you can use it to refuel tractors in the field if you've got a particularly big farm. If you remember a few videos ago in my video called Free Lunch for Macadamias, it's happening now. 2024, the marketing of Utriin is starting, and there's Corteva's stand for that. Be interesting to see who they're marketing that to. That's the product that makes ordinary plants behave a bit like legumes and feed themselves nitrogen with a bacterial relationship. So interesting to see that's now being actively marketed. I wanted to show you this. This is a hay rake, and one of these has been used on my farm. It's a very simple but interesting implement that you can use to take the gunk in the middle of your row, particularly after harvesting, and push it back under the tree roots where, leaf mold and everything will rot down and provide a benefit to the trees. Don't know what this one costs, but it's a fabulous looking bit of equipment, and mechanically really very simple. So definitely worth a look if you're into addressing erosion on your farms. Tractors and farm machinery tend to have specific colours to identify them from a distance, because you often do see them from a distance. Anyway, here's a brand that is from India, and I haven't seen them on many macadamia farms yet. Maybe some experts would want to comment in the discussion below. Do you have a Mahindra tractor? Is it reliable? What are the parts prices like? The other red brand on display is Massey Ferguson, and that's a really old tractor brand, and advertising that they come from big DNA with the little tractors. This little fella, I don't know how many horsepower he is, but it's a 54 grand tractor. Looks like it'd be usable for a lot of little things around a macadamia farm, but it's really the big ones you want that are going to do the heavy duty work like spraying. Typically you want 100 horsepower for that. Moving a little way across, we've got the familiar orange of Kabota. This particular Kabota, the M8540, is sometimes seen on macadamia orchards. There's a one that's a 9540 that's apparently not much more expensive, and the 85 and the 95 refer to the horsepower of the tractors. Meanwhile, we've got Dosfar, the green ones over here from Germany, and very mean, efficient looking tractors they are too. I've got a couple of neighbours who swear by them, so I imagine they're quite good quality. Don't know about the price. And despite the retro look of this particular vehicle, it's an all-terrain vehicle, it's electric. I don't know the brand. This one's about 34,000 bucks, but an electric all-terrain vehicle for going around on the farm instead of petrol. I don't know if that's the future quite yet for farm vehicles like tractors, because the amount of power they require well exceeds what we can do with a battery. So that, you know, a tractor that might be asked to work 8 hours, you might be lucky to get 80 minutes out of an electric tractor, given the weight of battery it would have to carry. So we don't know quite what the future is in terms of green farming machinery. If you're in the mood to be green, perhaps hydrogen engines are a more effective alternative. But all we can do in 2024 is speculate. Over here now we have a lot of implements. These ones lying on the ground are slashers. The one right in front of you here is a mulcher. Looks like they've been sold too, and I'm told that sales at these exhibitions can be actually pretty brisk for the people who exhibit here. There's a great big Bertie mulcher over there, the orange one, and we've got some more Kabota excavators. Love to have an excavator on the farm, but yeah, not this year. Now here's something I've been interested in, and they've been advertising in the AMS Journal. These concrete mats are basically rubber matting impregnated with lumps of concrete for erosion control. Now you wouldn't want to put them down necessarily between macadamia trees because they'd completely wreck a harvest, but in terms of your tracks along the farm, as an erosion control, it seems like a very clever idea, and probably not overly expensive, given that it just uses concrete in order to stabilise the soil underneath and allow other things like leaf litter and just general mud or whatever to accumulate around and just stabilise the base of the soil. Might even be decent for a driveway if you've got reasonable suspension on your ute. I think if money were no object, this would probably be the zero-turn mower I'd buy. It's the John Deere Z997R. It's a diesel. John Deere make both petrol and diesel mowers, but this one is strong as an ox, metal all round, and by reputation pretty good, according to my own mechanic. He says, look, you know, he prefers John Deere and Kabota as brands for a zero-turn mower. I guess though in this mud, you sort of worry about taking zero-turn mowers even out for a spin, and it's perhaps something like this, a four-wheel drive, like this 1585 here. This one's even got a cab with air conditioning, but it's an out front mower and has the advantage of having that four-wheel drive, so that rather than rely on two wheels to do all the work for you, you've got four and a little bit of traction when you get on a hill or a steep patch. And I guess it's rainy autumns like this that might push you in one direction rather than the other. Anyway, beautiful stuff. Over here you'll see Australian-made slashers. These are Howard slashers, apparently one of the best brands of slashers you can buy. Over here there are Sylvan sprayers. These are fairly small compared to what is used on most macadamia orchards, but they can be towed behind a slightly less power tractor. And these funnel things you see further on are actually fertiliser spreaders, where fertiliser gets dumped in the top of the funnel and then gets spread out at the bottom where the PTO joins the tractor, and it can throw out into the row. Again, not very large scale these ones, and the contractors use bigger ones, but for a one-man farm, the one-person farm, you could probably get away with one of these. Now this one here is for Carl de Gras, because if my memory serves me correct, he has a club car. And despite the interesting name, Club Car do sell all-terrain vehicles. This one's 26 grand on sale for the show. Looks like a fairly substantive kind of all-terrain vehicle too for that kind of money. And this one over here is on sale for 21 grand. So they're nice little utility vehicles to have around a farm. I get by with a quad bike myself, but certainly if you want to take more than one person around to do a job, it's very, very handy. Right next to us are the little Kangas, and these are an Australian invention, Australian built since 1981. You can use one of these fellas to dig your holes for your macadamia trees. I've done that myself. Very solid little machines, and if you're wondering where does the operator go, you stand at the rear and drive it along, and you can then just drill your holes for macadamia trees. That's if you're doing it manually, not by GPS or computer like the large farms do. But yeah, quite a digging implement and very, very solidly made. Here's an interesting concept. It's called a MultiOne, and these little vehicles can have many different implements on it, but the one that caught my eye was the flail mower on the front of really quite a small maneuverable machine. And a flail mower is essentially like a mulcher, using basically bashing grass off rather than cutting it. And it's probably good on rough terrain. I don't know if the vehicle's four-wheel drive. Oh, it does say four-wheel drive hydrostatic. Look, as with a lot of this equipment, you've really got to not just buy without researching. You've also got to have a really good look at who's able to support and service these vehicles. So in the Northern Rivers, if your base is Lismore, you'd want someone in Lismore able to get the parts and the service, because if they have to come from Casino or further out, then any downtime is going to be a lot longer for you. But what an interesting little idea. A flail mower on the top of what looks like a pretty small machine, and I imagine it's reasonably powerful. So nice concept, but don't know the brand. And no farm machinery exhibition in the Northern Rivers would be complete without Rob Mac. Now, Robert's Machinery started off making harvesters that you would fit onto the back of a Toro mower, and that was fine as far as it went, but they eventually got sick of that and made their own motorised unit and harvester. Now, this is exactly the kind of machine you could do on a small farm of about 1,500, 2,000, maybe even 3,000 trees. It's not high volume, it doesn't hold a huge amount of its hold, but it's a nice simple machine. It's usable on rough terrain, and it's often usable before you can use heavy machinery after rain. So it's got that nimble, highly turnable feature, and recommended, I think, by Nick Savage amongst others, who would rather use two of these in tandem than one big harvester on some of his farms, and locally very well supported. Question for my South African subscribers: have any of these made these to South Africa? I've heard that someone's been taking them to South Africa, but I'm not sure how well supported they are over there, or even how many are sold. So get in touch, I'd be interested to know. Over here, the tractor that mechanics love to hate, but I sort of love anyway, Antonio Cararo. Italian tractors, they've been made in Italy for a long, long time. Thankfully, they're no longer using their own engines, they're using Kabotas and other engine manufacturers. These tractors have the feature of being able to reverse the driving position so that the front and back end of the tractor are interchangeable just by turning the driver around. And yeah, not easy to work on, but their heritage is very much like a hilly farm heritage in the Northern Rivers. So these tractors are low to the ground, powerful, and can go around very tight corners. I have a Cararo. It's a bit sick at the moment. It needs some work, but I'm hoping to get it back up and running one day, because they're fun little machines and very, very powerful. In amongst all the farm machinery dealers, there are also regular car dealers as well, trying to sell you utes and various other things for the farm. But I must admit, I wasn't expecting to see this, and despite how desirable that kind of vehicle might be, I don't think it would make it up Eureka Road without a few scrapes on the bottom. Chevrolet Corvette, if I'm not mistaken. Here's a funny thing. I don't know a macadamia farmer who doesn't want an excavator. They're so good for digging out rocks or for making minor amendments or even helping unearth trees that need to be shifted, particularly ones that have fallen. But very few macadamia farmers actually own one. I guess it's just one of those equations where we don't need them often enough to justify owning one. And it's one of those categories where, a bit like chippers, although even more so than chippers, you tend to hire people in with excavators when you need an excavator to do some work. But certainly in the expo here today, there's a huge representation of people selling excavators for some really well-known brands like Komatsu, Hitachi, and various others. So here's a crowd I've mentioned in a couple of videos recently, Nutritech Solutions. And Nutritech are essentially one of a few advanced foliar feeding product vendors. It's chemical, but there are some microbe-based products as well, but all of which are based on foliar feeding. And back when the macadamia price was very high, they were a little bit in vogue in the market in that they were selling these products and advertising very high kernel recovery results from the farms that used them. And I'm sure none of that was misleading at all. It's just that it was a very expensive product and a very expensive way of feeding the product. And to contrast with that, Ross Arnett, in the lecture he gave to a few interested people in a pavilion here, said that, look, he wouldn't touch that stuff. And stuff you put on the ground is far more efficient than stuff you might spray into the tree. And he had some very interesting ideas, some quite controversial ones actually. He said, look, the best fertiliser you can give your plants is seed. And by that he means seeding various different species under the tree, some of which are legumes, which end up feeding the tree many other nutrients just from their own life cycle. And he said, look, his own soil and leaf tests were turning out beautiful levels of nutrient without any major feeds of compost, and that even manuring, which is all the go at the moment, he said, look, a lot of that just oxidizes. He does do manuring as a way of stimulating the soil, but all it is really a light dusting, 3 cubic metres a hectare, which is really very, very light dusting of manure over his farm. And he said, look, he's getting good soil and test results. The trees are doing well. He's getting good crops. And he says that you just don't need that heavy amount of manuring or feeding the trees, so long as you're stimulating the growth underneath. And it was a really interesting talk. And I'll finish the machinery with the current huge Toro mower, which is the latest incarnation. The one known to most macadamia farmers in the Northern Rivers is the 7200 series, and I believe this is the model, not sure of the number, that's replaced it. It's a big machine, no doubt about it, but very, very expensive, like most Toro products. And I can say from experience that the parts and service pricing, particularly if you get it done by the dealer, is voracious. So you get a good product, but you're signing yourself on to a very expensive relationship when you do. So bear that in mind, keep your eyes open. I'm not saying don't buy one, but you do need to have some money aside from the purchase price to keep it well maintained. So, the end of a long day at Primex. Look, I think it's worth a visit if you're a macadamia farmer, or if you're interested in joining the farming industry in one way or another, just to get an idea of what's available, what some of the latest ideas are, and do a direct comparison between many different vendors. You can always do that yourself, but it involves a lot of travelling around to different places and different dealerships where you can be exerted to, some high pressure sales. I've managed to go around here today to all the machinery exhibitors, and I haven't been approached by a single one of them, perhaps because I've been videoing some of the time. But it's Yeah, look, it's a definitely an ideas place, and you might pick up a bargain as well. Don't count on that, but certainly at a show they are here to sell things in some cases and generate further leads in others. So it's on, as I understand it, every year at Casino at least, and I don't know where else they might go for Primex. Maybe it's just Casino. Haven't done my research on that, I'm sorry, I should have. But I hope, despite the somewhat snapshotty format today, that you did enjoy coming along with me and seeing some of what I saw. I'll be back in touch again soon. Bye for now.